Back in the day, frozen seafood felt simple. You grabbed a box of fish sticks, tossed them in the oven, and called it dinner. No complicated labels, no ingredient lists that read like a chemistry exam. Just fish, breading, and maybe some tartar sauce on the side, but those days are gone. Because while you've been casually tossing frozen seafood into your cart without a second thought, some truly questionable brands have been quietly cutting corners in ways that should make you stop and stare at that freezer aisle a little longer. We're talking mystery fish blends, sodium levels that rival fast food burgers, breading so thick and aggressive it feels like you're eating a deep fried sponge instead of actual seafood. And here's the thing, seafood is one of the easiest foods to ruin when companies start prioritizing cheap fillers over real fish. The difference between a good frozen seafood brand and a bad one isn't subtle. You taste it immediately. So today we're ranking 8 frozen seafood brands from the worst offenders to the ones actually worth your money. Some of these are budget disasters dressed up in shiny packaging. Others are surprisingly solid options hiding in plain sight. Because life is too short to gamble on seafood that tastes like wet cardboard. Smash that subscribe button because we're about to save you from some seriously sketchy seafood. Number 8, Great Value Frozen Fish Fillets. Let's start at the bottom, and Great Value earns this spot without much competition. Great Value is Walmart's store brand, and the entire premise is built around one thing, being cheap. And look, there's nothing wrong with budget options in theory, but here's the thing, when you're cutting costs on seafood, the fish is usually the first thing to go. The fillets are thin, suspiciously thin, and what little fish is actually in there tends to be watery before it even hits the oven, which means by the time it's done cooking, you're looking at something roughly half the size of what you started with. Shoppers have described this phenomenon repeatedly. You pull out what looks like a respectable fillet, cook it according to the instructions, and it shrinks into something that looks like it went through a rough emotional experience. And get this, the texture manages to be rubbery and mushy at the same time, which sounds impossible, but Great Value somehow pulls it off. The exterior gets crispy enough, sure, but bite through that breading and you're met with fish that has the consistency of wet paper. The real kicker is the sodium situation. For a portion size that leaves most adults still hungry, the sodium count is genuinely aggressive. You're essentially paying for a breadcrumb delivery system with a vague fish suggestion buried somewhere inside. Bottom line, Great Value Seafood survives purely because it's available at Walmart and priced at a point where the impulse purchases happen constantly. They're banking on you being too busy or too broke to care about the quality. Don't let them win. Number 7, Gorton's Fish Fillets. Gorton's is an American institution. The yellow raincoat fisherman has been staring at you from the freezer aisle since before most of us were born. And that nostalgia is doing an enormous amount of heavy lifting here, because the actual product has some real problems. Here's the thing about Gorton's. The brand has survived for decades on recognition and the emotional memory of eating fish sticks as a child. That's a legitimate business strategy. But nostalgia doesn't fix a bad fish to breading ratio, and Gorton's has a serious one. What you're getting with a typical Gorton's fillet is roughly 70% coating and 30% fish. That's not a guess. That's what the eating experience feels like every single time. The exterior comes out crispy, sometimes borderline greasy, which is impressive in its own way. But bite through it and the interior is soft, occasionally watery, and genuinely bland. In a way that's hard to describe except to say that you've tasted more fish flavor in a saltine cracker. What makes this particularly frustrating is that Gorton's charges a premium price relative to its actual quality. You're not buying a budget brand here. You're buying a legacy brand that knows its name recognition is worth more than the fish inside the box. But here's where it gets tricky. Gorton's isn't terrible. It's mediocre in a specific, reliable way. Kids love it because kids love anything crispy and mild. Adults buy it because it's familiar and the instructions are simple. It is, in the most literal sense, the fast food of the frozen seafood aisle. Predictably average, never surprising, always there. The most infuriating part is that it could be so much better. The infrastructure exists, the brand equity exists, but there's no financial incentive to improve when people keep buying it anyway. Number 6, SeaPak Butterfly Shrimp. SeaPak markets itself as a premium frozen shrimp brand. The packaging looks upscale. The name sounds like it belongs in a seafood restaurant. And somewhere along the way, SeaPak convinced a significant portion of the population that this is the good stuff. It is not the good stuff. Here's the thing, the shrimp themselves are technically fine. They're not offensive. But the butterfly shrimp product specifically has a texture issue that becomes more obvious the more you eat it. The exterior gets properly crispy, which is genuinely the one thing SeaPak does right consistently. But the shrimp inside can feel dense and slightly rubbery in a way that suggests the cooking process isn't doing the natural shrimp texture any favors. The salt situation is also worth addressing directly. SeaPak butterfly shrimp are aggressively salty in a way that overwhelms whatever natural shrimp sweetness might have existed. After a full serving, your mouth feels like it just experienced a sodium event. And get this, the shrimp count per box has been quietly shrinking over the years while the price has stayed flat or increased. This is a well-documented pattern called shrinkflation, and SeaPak has been practicing it enthusiastically. You're paying more for fewer shrimp with heavier breading, which is the seafood equivalent of a magic trick where you're the one getting fooled. The real kicker is that SeaPak's brand positioning is built entirely on the idea that you're treating yourself, that you're getting something better than the generic alternative. But when the math doesn't add up, that positioning starts feeling like diet theater. Number 5, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks. If this is already saving you from a bad meal, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. Mrs. Paul's has been around since the 1950s, which means it predates most of the frozen food industry as we know it. And there's something almost admirable about a brand that has survived that long without fundamentally changing what it is. The problem is that what it is hasn't evolved to meet modern expectations of what frozen seafood can actually taste like. Mrs. Paul's fish sticks are the nostalgia pick. The brand that adults buy because it's what their parents bought, and parents buy because kids will eat it without complaining. The exterior is crunchy in an aggressively generic way. The interior fish is soft, mild, and processed to within an inch of its life. We're talking fish that has been so thoroughly transformed from its original state that calling it fish forward would be a significant stretch. Here's the thing, Mrs. Paul's isn't trying to impress you. It never was. The entire value proposition is that children will consume it willingly and it won't bankrupt you at the checkout. By those metrics, it succeeds. But what makes this particularly uninspiring is that the fish flavor is essentially theoretical. You're tasting breading, salt, and a vague maritime suggestion. The actual seafood is playing. Back up to a supporting cast of binders, coatings, and additives that have no intention of letting the main ingredient speak for itself. It's reliable, it's fine. It's the frozen seafood equivalent of beige. And for some households, that's exactly what they need. But if you're buying this because you think you're getting quality seafood, you've been misled by decades of brand inertia. Number 4, Trident Seafoods. Here's where the rankings start to actually get interesting. Trident Seafoods is an Alaskan seafood company that supplies restaurants, institutional buyers, and grocery stores. They're not primarily a consumer brand in the way that Gorton's or Mrs. Paul's is. They're a supplier that also happens to sell directly to you through the freezer aisle, and that distinction matters because Trident is building product to satisfy commercial buyers who have quality standards and repeat purchase relationships on the line. That creates a different kind of accountability than brands that survive purely on consumer nostalgia and aggressive marketing. And get this, you can taste the difference. The fish is actually flaky in the way fish is supposed to be flaky. When you pull a Trident fillet apart, it separates in clean layers rather than tearing like wet tissue paper or coming apart in a single mushy mass. The seafood flavor is cleaner, more present, and noticeably less buried under sodium and filler. The real kicker is the price point. Trident sits on the higher end of what you'd expect to pay in the frozen aisle, and the portion sizes don't always justify the cost for budget-conscious shoppers. You're sometimes paying a premium for quality that exists but doesn't come in large enough quantities to feel like a great value. But here's the thing, Trident proves that frozen seafood can actually taste like seafood. That's not a small achievement in this category, it's practically a breakthrough. Bottom line, Trident is restaurant supply quality that landed in your grocery store freezer. If the price works for your budget, it's worth a step up. Number 3, Fremont Fish Market from Aldi. And if you're finding this ranking useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the noise. Now here's where the rankings get genuinely surprising because the bronze medal in this lineup belongs to Aldi, specifically Aldi's Fremont fish market line, which routinely does something remarkable. It embarrasses brands that cost twice as much. Aldi's entire business model is built around stripping out the middleman, limiting selection, and passing the savings directly to you. And in most categories, you get what you pay for. But the Fremont fish market line is one of the clearest examples of that model actually producing something excellent rather than merely adequate. Here's the thing, the fish stays firm and flaky through the cooking process. Not rubbery, not mushy. Actually flaky in a way that suggests there's real fish inside and someone made decisions about how to handle it properly before it got frozen. In the oven or the air fryer, the coating gets genuinely crispy without being excessively thick or greasy. What makes this particularly impressive is the seasoning balance. It's present without being aggressive. You can actually taste the fish beneath it, which puts Fremont Fish Market ahead of brands charging significantly more for the privilege of drowning your seafood in sodium. The price to quality ratio here is almost offensive to the competition. You're walking out of Aldi spending less and getting more, which is exactly the kind of consumer advocacy math that should be celebrated loudly. Bottom line, Fremont Fish Market is the budget brand that shows up and humiliates the established players. If you have an Aldi near you and you haven't tried this yet, that's a gap in your grocery strategy that needs to be fixed immediately. Number 2, Kirkland Signature frozen shrimp from Costco. Kirkland Signature is Costco's store brand, and at this point, the label has earned a level of consumer trust that most dedicated seafood brands would envy. And the frozen shrimp specifically is one of the clearest examples of why that reputation exists. Here's the thing, the shrimp are large. Actually large, not large as defined by a brand that's been quietly downsizing its product while hoping you don't notice. They're well cleaned, which sounds like a minimum expectation, but is worth acknowledging because the frozen shrimp category has some genuinely concerning entries when it comes to prep quality. The texture when cooked properly is firm and juicy, not rubbery, not dense. Actually juicy, with a slight snap when you bite through that signals the shrimp were handled well from catch to freezer. The flavor is clean with a natural sweetness that reminds you that shrimp, at their best, don't need much done to them to taste good. What makes this particularly valuable is the minimal additive situation. Kirkland. Signature shrimp typically contains very few ingredients beyond the shrimp itself, which is increasingly rare in a category that loves to add sodium phosphates, preservatives, and moisture retaining compounds that fundamentally alter the texture of what you're eating. And get this, you're buying in bulk, which means the per unit cost comes out to something that makes the premium brands in smaller packages look borderline absurd by comparison. The real kicker is that this is genuinely premium seafood at a price point that makes sense. That combination is rarer than it should be. Number 1, Sea Best Frozen Seafood. Sea Best takes the top spot and it earns it the right way, not through nostalgia, not through marketing budget, not through brand recognition built up over decades of television commercials, through the actual quality of the seafood inside the packaging. Here's the thing, Sea Best consistently delivers fish that is flaky, moist, and clean tasting in a way that makes you stop and reconsider your assumptions about what frozen seafood is capable of. The texture is what separates it from everything below it on this list. There's no rubberiness, no mushiness, no suspicious density that suggests the fish has been processed beyond recognition. It pulls apart in clean, natural flakes the way fish is supposed to behave. The ingredient list is notably minimal, fewer additives, fewer fillers, less of the industrial processing that turns real seafood into something that only vaguely resembles its original form. And that restraint pays off directly in the eating experience. What makes this particularly impressive is that Sea Best achieves this without pricing itself into a category most shoppers can't access. It sits in a reasonable range that makes the quality feel like a discovery rather than an obvious luxury purchase. Reviewers consistently describe it as the closest to fresh fish you can buy from a frozen section, and that's not a small thing to say about a product that lives in a freezer case. The seafood flavor is present, genuine, and not buried under layers of sodium and binder. You can actually taste what you're eating. The most remarkable part is what it proves. Frozen seafood doesn't have to taste frozen. It doesn't have to be a compromise between convenience and quality. See Best is evidence that the right decisions made at the sourcing and processing level translate directly into a product that respects the ingredient it's built around. Bottom line, if you want frozen seafood that delivers a real seafood experience without the drama of questionable ingredients and aggressive processing, See Best is where you start and probably where you stay. So let's bring it all home. Number 8, great value, a breadcrumb delivery system with a fish suggestion. Number 7, Gorton's, surviving entirely on brand recognition and your childhood memories doing its dirty work. Number 6, SeaPak, premium positioning, shrinking shrimp counts, and a sodium level your cardiologist would find concerning. Number 5, Mrs. Paul's, reliable, inoffensive, and about as exciting as the concept of dinner as a legal obligation. Number 4, Trident, where the quality actually starts to show up, priced accordingly. Number 3, Fremont Fish Market from Aldi, the budget option that makes the expensive ones look embarrassed. Number 2, Kirkland Signature, bulk shrimp that tastes genuinely premium, which should not be as rare as it is. And number 1, See Best, proof that frozen seafood can be something you actually want to eat rather than something you merely tolerate. The frozen seafood aisle is full of brands making promises their products can't keep. Nostalgia-driven packaging, premium language attached to average product, shrimp counts that quietly disappear over time while the price quietly rises. But the good options exist. You just have to know which boxes to reach for and which ones to walk past. And now you know, hit subscribe. If this changed how you'll navigate the freezer aisle, and drop a comment telling us which ranking you think we got wrong. Because someone out there is about to go to bat for Gorton's, and honestly, that conversation is worth having.